And we are live. What's going on, YouTube Live? It's your boy, Billy Rowe. Today is Tuesday. I'd like to welcome you to the first row. And since it is Tuesday, you should already know what that means. It's time for a first row Intersation. Tonight's topic is going to be working through marriage. And that is with a very good friend of mine, Sylvia London. Sylvia, can you say hello to the people, please?
Hi, guys.
She's back. I'm telling you, you do like an Intersation or you get on the first row and it becomes an addiction.
Yeah.
But tonight, you guys, I'm really happy that you guys are tuning in for this particular Intersation because I think this is a topic that whether you're married, whether you're looking to get married, whether you've been married, whether your boyfriend and girlfriend engaged, either way, marriage is a part of life for many of us. Not for all of us, but for many of us, it becomes a part of life. And I feel like there's some misleading concepts out there sending people down the wrong path when it comes to marriage. So I think this will be a very good topic for us tonight. So without further ado, let's get into tonight's topic. I'm going to give Sylvia, well, before I give you a chance to introduce yourself for the second time, Sylvia, I'm actually going to tell with our audience what a Intersation is for those who are new to the Intersation concept. So for those who are new to Intersation, what that is simply when you take an interview and you take a conversation and you merge those two together, you get Intersation. So in my life, I'm very, very privileged to have a robust network of friends, family, coworkers, strangers, and everything in between that I have conversations with. And typically those conversations go from that surface level, how are you, what have you been up to much more deep and meaningful things like, what does that mean to you? Why do you think that way? Those are the types of conversations that I'm privy to have. And because I'm privy to have those type of conversations, what Intersations is me opening up a literal lens into those conversations so that the growth that I get from those conversations and the development that I get from those conversations can be shared with a broad audience. So though tonight you will see via video, Sylvia and I communicating back and forth, realize that this is a very interactive network. We love interactions. So please chime in. If you have a question, feel free to ask it. If we don't answer something clearly enough, feel free to ask for clarification. If there's a nugget that you want to provide in the conversation, feel free to provide that nugget so that we can bring that into the conversation as well. So without further ado, Sylvia, before we get into this round 2 of Intersations, let's go ahead and have you introduce yourself and say hello again to the people.
So like Billy said, my name is Sylvia. We're talking about marriage. So my husband and I have been married for 20 years, together 21.
Sorry.
Yes. We have a lot to talk about tonight. And we have 4 kiddos that we are still raising-ish. We do a lot of things to bring in income, but our primary focus right now is raising them and homeschooling them and sending them off into the world.
I like that. So 20 years married. Y'all better pay attention to that. I'm telling you right now. First off, for us to be the same age and you to have 20 years of marriage under your belt, you're over here killing the game, girl. So congratulations to you and your husband. But I'm going to let it be known right off the top, that is not easily an easily won feat. We're going to call it that. So I'm really looking forward to you sharing your insights tonight and really engaging with the audience on what this topic means to you and how you've gotten to where you're 20 years in the game after 21 years together. So let's jump on into it. So as always with Intersations, I like to start off with the very same question for my guest. The first question that I want to ask you is when it comes to the topic of working through marriage, what does this topic mean to you?
It means everything to me because we wouldn't be where we are now if we hadn't put in the work that we put in to get to where we are. And I think a lot of people want their marriages to not just survive, but to thrive. And they don't know how, or it's easier to just kind of walk away than it is to put up a fight. Or they don't I think a lot of people don't share their stories. I was watching a sermon the other day, and he was talking about how too many of us are quick to say that we've been married for so many years and share the good parts, but then you're leaving other people to think that, okay, you've been married for 20 years and I see all the good parts and then there's no struggle. And that's not true. I don't know any marriage that has not struggled. So I think it's important to share your struggles and share that, we had to climb a mountain to get to where we're at. It was not, sunshine and roses the whole time.
Mm. I like that you say thrive instead of survive. Like, oh, I just want to survive this marriage. It's like, look, I'm not here on planet Earth just to survive. Like, that's not the type of life I want to live. I want to thrive. I want to excel. I want to experience things. And in the same aspects, when it comes to marriage, I think that is a pivotal concept of moving out of that. Well, I just want to survive. I just want to survive the first year and the second year and the third year. And if we could get to year 5 and we could survive year 5, then we'll be out of the clear. No, you won't. So you might as well start working about thriving from the gate. So I feel a lot in the same way, even though I'm separated currently and have been divorced once. When it comes to marriage, I feel like should be the goal, is that thriving nature, that really bringing the best out of the person. And when it comes to working through marriage, it really should bring out the best in you. Like, it's going to bring out, don't get me wrong, it's going to bring out some ugly parts of you, but it should also bring out the best in you. And that's what I try to strive to teach my children when it comes to, like, hey, for me, I want you to be with somebody who brings out the best in you and you bring out the best in them. And that is what my definition of a healthy marriage is, because if you're both working to bring the best out of each other and out of yourselves, you're going to definitely reach that thrive stride versus that survival instinct. So I'm really looking forward to tonight's questions tonight, because I think there's a lot of insight that you'll bring. And for those who have not tuned into the Intersation previously with you on it, that is Don't Panic. So if you're looking for the inaugural episode of Sylvia London on the First Row Network, that is Don't Panic. So make sure you check that out as well. But now the easy question is over. Let's jump into tonight's questions. The very first real question I want to ask you tonight is, where do you think people are getting their fairy tale experience or expectation of marriage from in today's society?
Growing up, for me, it was TV, it was movies, it was sitcoms. I don't think I ever saw a sitcom or a movie really that wasn't fairy tale, wasn't all the good parts of marriage. As a matter of fact, I remember watching, while my husband and I have separated before previously. We were very close to divorce, which we will talk about later. But during our separation, I actually watched this one movie called The Story of Us. It had Bruce Willis and Michelle Pfeiffer in it. It actually came out in 99, but I watched it like later in 2000. And it was probably the most real movie I've ever seen on the struggles of marriage. And I mean, down to the part where they had gotten into an argument and they had gone to bed, and he was trying to see if they, were they going to make up or whatever. So he kind of rubbed her foot with his foot, and she pulled her foot away. And that was like a telltale sign for my husband and I. Like, we knew the other person was mad if we were not going to touch that sounds so silly, but I mean, it's true. And right. I didn't grow up seeing that type of stuff. Like, I grew up watching all the fantasy fairy tale movies. And nowadays we have social media where, let's be honest, who really puts out their, horrible parts of their life? It's all the perfect pictures and the perfect look at us, even though it may have been staged 100 million times before they got the picture on to social media. You know what I mean? So I think our kids, unfortunately, face even more of that challenge now with the reality of what marriage really looks like versus what is put out there on social media and entertainment.
It's funny, the social media aspect, but you're right. The TV aspect from our generation, like seeing like healthy, balanced families. So you got like Family Matters, Family Ties, all these, just the 10 of us, like all these different TV shows showing you this healthy nuclear family. And you're like, well, that's not the family I'm growing up in. Like, my family is nothing like these sitcoms. Like, there's no studio audience saying, oh, and ha, 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 ha. There's just like, Billy, get your butt in your room and clean it up. It's like the real world. So for me, I understand when you say like that TV concept saying, oh, well, this is what marriage should be like. And this is the fairy tale. And this is how he should propose to you. And this is how you should see. And this is the, oh my gosh, face you should make. These are all the things that you do. And they kind of psychologically condition you for a certain expectation. And I think there's a significant letdown when you get to the reality of what marriage is. Even sometimes what the reality of a proposal is, you get to that and it's like, well, you didn't take me to the beach. You didn't like surprise me with all my friends. There was no airplane. Remember skywriting with the airplane? Will you marry me? Look, I can't afford an airplane to be writing, will you marry me in the sky? I'm sorry. So if you need that, then guess it's not going to happen. but all those things, they kind of create this picture that we have, this perfect picture of how it's going to go down. And then when it doesn't go down that way, it's like, well, why didn't it? From the perspective of social media, I kind of want to dive in that deeper because I think that's more current in where we're at today. I think TV plays less of a role and social media plays more of a role. If you're inundated by social media from the concept of like all these proposals, like proposing at basketball games and all these different things, how do you shift away from that, from being inundated with that, to shift into more realistic expectations of not just proposal, but marriage in general?
Oh gosh. What's funny is our poor kids, you've seen the like promposals now? Like that is so insane to me. Like,
I haven't seen promposals and I hope I never do. Sorry.
It's ridiculous. Like kids are asking kids to the prom as if they're proposing. It's the craziest thing. It's crazy. But again, that's that unexpected, expectation or unrealistic expectations that is put out there on social media. But to me, the best way to get away from that is to look at those around you. Look at the real relationships that you have in your life. Look at your parents. Look at, my kids know, and I'm thankful that we went through the struggle that we did because they know marriage is not easy. They know marriage is work, and they see that there were some bad parts and there are some great parts. And now my kids will tell you, like, my husband and I are relationship goals, if you will, to my kids. And that's like the most important thing to do is look at the people around, the real people around you, the people that you really know, not the people that are putting on a front and want to make things look like they're okay, but the real people in your lives that like you see their relationships and the goods and the bad. I mean, that's really where you're going to get your most realistic expectations from.
I like that because it's funny because for me, when my wife and I separated, I just left I didn't care. I just left my Facebook profile as it was. And it wasn't like, oh, I want people to think that I'm married and think that everything's great. I just didn't care enough to change it. And then when I finally did change it, it was just like on a random day. I was like, oh, I guess I'll finally change that. But it's funny because even while it still said I was married, I was getting, oh, your beautiful family, this, that, and the other, everything's going great for you. And I'm like, we're working on like co-parenting stuff now. And we have a great relationship as co-parents, but it's like we're not working on like the nuclear family, everybody in the same household type stuff. We are working on dad's in Utah, families, or mom and two of the sons are in California, another son's out here with me in Utah. We're working on effective co-parenting and making sure that we're still a team when it comes to our kids. And genuinely, I think sincerely want the best for each other. Whereas in our marriage, we kind of weren't wanting the best for each other. We were kind of in this competition that was very unhealthy. And from her stance, it was a passive aggressive competition. From my stance, it was a very direct aggressive competition. So I get where you're saying, from that social media point, moving away from that and trying to get into reality where you're going to see real world examples. Now, one of the challenges, and you tell me what your thoughts are on this, one of the challenges with that is real world examples come with real world problems. And sometimes those problems are not addressed correctly. So you can get a real world example that can set a real world bad example on how to deal with marriage. I mean, that could be anything from like, well, if you're not happy in your relationship, stay in a relationship, cheat on your husband, cheat on your wife. That can be, don't say anything and just starve out the sex game. Like it could be so many different things that are bad examples. How do you discern, like in those real relationships that you're now observing, if you're shifting from social media to the reality spectrum, how do you discern what information you should be bringing in and should kind of let go past you?
So, well, the key word is discern. And like for me, as you know, prayer is a large part of my relationship, my marriage. And I think some things, you see, like growing up, there were certain marriages that I saw where I saw the wife talking down to the husband constantly. And I think you can kind of get an idea on what is a positive or negative force in the marriage. Obviously, when that wife or wives were talking down to their husbands constantly, the husbands did not reciprocate that very well, and it caused friction between them. So common sense would tell you, maybe that's not the best way to talk to my husband. Or, there have been plenty of people who, are out there sidestepping. And I think just morally, we usually would know that that's not the right thing to do. But for my husband and I, it was a lot of learning, honestly. Like I've been with him since I was 18, married since I was 19. So I was a baby when we got married. So there in the early years, there was a lot of immaturity going along. There was a lot of like game playing. We were newly married when the internet and instant messaging, the chat rooms. And so we would purposely, I'm just going to be real with you guys. We would purposely, to make each other like jealous or keep each other on our toes or whatever it was, we'd be in a chat room doing nothing. But then if he came by or if I came by, we would minus it down or we'd move the screen. You know what I mean? Just playing games, like just silly stuff. So a lot of it was just learning, like, you know what, that doesn't make them feel really good. That doesn't make me feel really good. So it's just kind of watching, how, if you're looking at other people's marriages, you can tell if it's successful or not. Like, is the way that they're communicating successful? Are they getting along, or are they constantly arguing? Is the way they're speaking to each other successful? Or, do they come across like they hate each other? You can kind of gauge what works and what doesn't work, and what will work and what won't work for you.
So then for you, kind of like going into that game syndrome, because I think even at 18, we don't think that the marriage we're getting into is going to be this game of let me hide my screen, let me hide my chat, let me make them jealous, let them make me jealous. Oh, see, we love each other. I don't think that's initially our standpoint on what marriage is going to be. However, it can become that if you allow it to spiral out of control, it can become that. But for you, what were some of your fairy tale expectations that you had going into marriage, especially going into marriage young, and no discredit to your intelligence, but also kind of naive on your life experiences at 18? What I knew at 18 and what I know at 38, that's night and day. So for you, what were some of your fairy tale expectations that you went in with, that and how did you handle the disappointment of some of those fairy tales not coming true?
Oh gosh. First of all, so naive, like 100% naive. But I mean, I expected it to be perfect. There would be no arguing. We were going to have established careers, and we weren't going to have any debt. And, our kids were going to be put in private school, and we were going to raise our kids up in the church together and cuddle every single night. And, just obviously that, right? You laugh, I know. Like happy, no problems at all, vacationing all the time, marriage. And obviously, the cuddling doesn't last all night long. Like, first of all, eventually, even I'm like not a cuddler, but that it just, all of that. Like, there were points in our marriage where, yeah, we had the established careers, we were vacationing, et cetera, et cetera. But for the most part, even now we don't have established careers because our goal has shifted as far as what we're focusing on right now. We've lost our houses, we've lost our cars. So, I mean, we've gone from in my life has not turned out at all like I envisioned it to turn out. Let's just say that. You know what I mean? Not that I would have it any other way now, but I don't think we ever get into any relationship with the exact idea of what it is really truly going to look like. And the way that I dealt with it was that game playing. The game playing came along like around 4 or 5 years later, where we were kind of annoyed with each other at that point. We were, that was the longest relationship my husband had been in prior to me was a year, and that was a rocky relationship. So by year 4 or 5, like that's stretching it for him as far as like the commitment. You know what I mean? So you get to a point where, yeah, like what are we doing and where do we go from here? So, and again, it takes work, and we went downhill and we've come back up. So.
Let me bring in some of the things from the chat really quick because I want to make sure I stay caught up. The first one is from Tanya Lynn. It says, "Happy social media didn't exist my first marriage, or exist first marriage. LOL." Bruce says, "Hard work. A real relationship is 24/7 work." True. Tanya Lynn says, "Yes, sis. Married at 19 and together 16. Whole lot of growing. Thinking we would be together forever and stay the same as the beginning." And that's really not healthy. I want to ask you about that. Remind me to come back to that. Jay Renard, notification squad. I'm at my lunch break, or I'd have logged in already. No worries. Welcome. Come when you can, man. And if you can't watch it all, watch the replay. And let's jump back up really quick to what Tanya said. Thinking we would be together forever and stay the same as the beginning. Oh man, this is one of the fairy tales. I got my own opinions on this. What are your thoughts about that as far as the being together forever and specifically staying the same since the beginning?
So I think that goes with I love you, Tom, but I was the same. I thought we were going to stay the same, right? But I think that just goes with the maturity of your relationship, because honestly, if you really think about it, and I'm sure Tanya would think the same thing now, if you're staying the same through your relationship, you're not growing. And so you never want to stay the same, because that means you're staying stagnant. So you always want to grow, but the goal is to grow together. And there was a point when my husband and I did separate and we were headed to divorce, where we were growing apart. We were not growing together. And the reason why was because we had changed. I was 18 when I met him. So obviously, at 30, I was not that little baby 18-year-old girl anymore. You know what I mean? Like, I had changed, and obviously he had changed too. So that is another fairy tale idea that we probably all have, but it's very unrealistic, and it shouldn't be. Like, we should want to change, but we should want to grow together. That should be the ultimate goal.
Yeah, I think you hit that spot on, because that's how I feel. It's like, and I think that's what Tanya meant when she was saying it, that, hey, thinking that was the naive state that she was in, is I thought we would be together forever and we would never change. We'd always be the same as the beginning. Oh, see, she confirmed it. See, we got you, Tanya. But that is the naivety, that the naivety, I think is the word, the way it's pronounced, of that fairy tale. Like, oh, the first kiss is always going to be like the first kiss. Every kiss is going to be like that. Every warm and fuzzy moment, everything is just going to always be so beautiful. Flowers and roses and candy and sweet and sugar and spice and everything nice. Everything is always going to be that. And then you run into the reality, like, where you run into that day where you like looking at your spouse and you're like, I don't like you today. Like, don't get me wrong, I love you, but I really don't like you today. And now it's like, oh, wow. Now you're forced to either stay the same, if you're still staying the same, whereas especially starting a relationship so young in life, the way we function in high school and the way we function, as young adults is, I don't like you. I really don't talk to you. I don't interact with you. And that concept and that maturity doesn't translate well into a marriage, where I don't like you. Because we're married, I don't get to say, I don't want to talk to you and I don't want to be around you and I don't mess with you anymore. No, we're married. So I don't like you right now. And I need to figure out how to get back to a space of liking you. And I need to also communicate. This is where I think the transition takes place and the growth takes place. I also need to communicate to you what it is I'm not enjoying about you in this specific moment, which doesn't mean it doesn't mean I do not like you, but it means this particular action, this particular instance, I'm not happy with, and I want to resolve it. I want us to grow from it. And so I think you hit it really, really good on the head when you say that growing together, because when I look at the relationship that's coming to an end now, it's like, well, we were growing, and then that same naive mindset of, oh, well, we're going to be the same. And, it's cool because she's fun. She's happy-go-lucky and she's easygoing. And, in the beginning is like, oh, and she burps. So she's like one of the guys. And then 13 years later, you're still burping at the table. I'm like, can you stop burping at the table? So it's all these things, but the growth that we are experiencing, though she's growing in her own right, I'm growing in my own right, but we're growing in two different directions. And so we get so far apart from each other to where it's like trying to shout over a mountain. Yeah, I don't know you're over there and I can't hear you. And so then you start losing the intimacy and the connection and all the other different things. And then for me, I know for me firsthand, like once I lose the intimacy, I have a wandering eye. Like when I'm in love, I can be focused on the person. But when I start feeling like I'm all alone and I start feeling like I'm single, I can be very charming as a single individual and in a relationship. So I have to be cautious of that, because what will end up happening is like, oh, well, you're not single, Billy, you're married. And so then it comes to a question of what kind of husband do you want to be? Do you want to be the cheating husband, or do you want to be the faithful husband? And for me, that has always been a struggle for me. So I really have to focus in on, I don't want to be a cheating husband. I know logically and I know emotionally, I know mentally that's not who I want to be. So therefore I have to make sure that I'm aligning myself and my actions with the faithful husband, the husband who's coming home at night and doing the things that he needs to do to keep himself safe and in his marriage. So I think you hit that nail on the head. That's critical. So thank you, Tanya, for bringing that in, because that fairy tale thinking as a teen will get us every time. Let's move on to the next question, because this is kind of like one of the fairy tales, but I don't think it's just a fairy tale. I think sometimes it's weaponized. And that comes in the terms of unconditional love. I feel like I've heard often that, oh, my husband should love me unconditionally. My wife should love me unconditionally. Should marriage be this place of unconditional love? And if so, how do we get to that space?
So here are my thoughts on that. I think love is unconditional. I think marriage and relationships can be conditional. And here's why I say that, because for me personally, and this is you're going to be the one that determines whether or not the marriage or relationship is conditional or unconditional, because it really depends on who you are as a person. For me personally, if my husband ever cheated on me, I would still love him. Absolutely, undoubtedly, I wouldn't be able to turn that off. So that's the unconditional part of love. But my marriage would be conditional, because I would not be able to proceed in our marriage after that point, because me as a person individually, I would not be able to move past that. Even in other friendships and relationships where trust has been broken, we may have continued that friendship or relationship, but at a completely different level and never getting back to the level it was at. You know what I mean? So for me, I feel like love is unconditional, but marriage and relationships can absolutely be conditional.
I like that. I've never even thought of it like that, of separating the love from the marriage in that sense, because you're right. You can love somebody. I still love my estranged wife. I still love her, but there's no desire for the marriage there. And because there's no desire for the marriage there, it's unfair to say, well, I love you, but I'm going to stay married to you, even though I don't want to be married to you. And I know that there's going to be some consequences and stupid choices I make because I don't want to be in this marriage. But I love you, so I'm going to stay. That I think is pivotal to that unconditional love argument. It's like, yeah, no, I can love you unconditionally, but that doesn't mean I need to love you in this marriage. And I think one of my church moms, Sister Francesca, she used to say, hey, I'm commanded by God to love you, but I can love you across the street. I don't need you on this side of the street with me. So that is definitely something that I haven't thought about in that perspective. But I like the fact that you separate the two. Let me bring in what Jay Renard says. I'm not a fan of marriage as my job requires a lot more fortitude than a regular marriage. Honestly, most women can't handle a huge outside entity, military, okay, that can't be separate from the marriage. Can you clarify that for me a little bit on that, cousin? Katina Walker says, I really enjoy watching. We really enjoy you being on the network tonight. And I like that statement. Relationships can be conditional. Yes, I do too. And Shelly, I think Stafford. Unconditional love, conditional marriage. Very well said. And Tanya Lynn, you guys are talking so fast I can barely keep up. Tanya Lynn, I have grown so much since the first marriage and its failure, and knowing us being unevenly yoked, addiction, cheating, and mental illness played a part. This time around, engaged 10 years. Hey, man, I feel you on being engaged for a long, long time on that one, because my second marriage, it was like, hey, people are like, you guys aren't married yet? No, we're not. And we're not in the rush that you want us to be in, because we want to try to be sure. And in all honesty, I think that the marriage could have worked. But one thing I know is that just because something can work, it requires both parties to be willing to work it. So I knew that my willingness wasn't there. And one of the things for me is, again, I didn't want it to be an additional 5-10 years when I don't have the willingness and I don't have the drive to continue to push the relationship forward and continue to work to grow back together. I just didn't have it within myself. So I like that. All those things being said, let's ask you to the next question. Sylvia, you're doing wonderful tonight, by the way. You're doing so wonderful tonight. The next question I'd like to ask you is, what type of challenges do you feel put the toughest strain on marriage? And let's kind of stay in that realm of marriage and love being separate. I like that realm. So what do you think puts the toughest strain on marriage?
For us, it was finances and kids, disciplining kids. The stress of finances, and then for a very long time, very, very long time, we did not see eye to eye in disciplining. And he was like the drill sergeant dad, and I was like the mama bear nurturing, mama. And one of the things I realized I did wrong then, but I would come to my kids' defense in front of my kids. And that should never happen. I learned, obviously, like, we need to have those conversations and discuss that away from the kids. But that was a huge battle for us for a long time, was disciplining. And then I know a lot of people that struggle with the sexual aspect. They're not on the same page sexually. And that has caused struggles as well.
Yeah, it's hard when your sex drives don't match up. Where you're like, hey, I kind of want it every night. And they're like, hey, I kind of only want to give it to you twice a week. You're like, look, so, and this is going to sound so horrible. I'm just going to let you know right now before I say it, Sylvia, so don't judge me. But I used to tell people, I will outsource your tasks. Like, if you are not willing to provide what is like mission critical to me, then we'll have a very upfront and honest conversation about it. But like, okay, so what are you okay with me outsourcing? If there's something like hell bent that you just really don't want to do and you're like, no, okay, so what are you comfortable with outsourcing? If it's not something that you want to provide, but it's something that I really want, then what's the plan? Because it's something that I really want. Just like for her, if there was something that she really wanted, and it's like, okay, I did a writing a long time ago, like, for her, it was like kisses and affection. Now, I'm not an overly affectionate person. Like, I can cuddle and be cool like that, but like, I don't need you in my face 24/7. But some people need that type of affection. So for me, it's like, I used to have to purposely tell myself, hey, Billy, if you haven't given your wife a kiss today, or in 3 days, or all week, or in a month, not that I ever went that far, but in a month, then she hasn't been kissed intimately by a person in today, a week, 3 days, a month, whatever it may be. And so I had to start becoming very intentional about, though I may not be affectionate, I need to make sure that I'm pouring some type of affection into this relationship, because it's a nutrient that she needs. And what I don't want is her being like, oh, this guy at the gym said I'm cute, and he was watching me do my squats and said, oh, you got a cute booty, and now all of a sudden she getting affection from somebody else, and so now my role has been outsourced to somebody else. So I definitely feel that aspect where you're looking at the sexual desires of your partner, you're looking at the financial alignment. Like, I was a very big future planner. I was like, okay, can we not spend up all the money right now and like save to do things? And she was like, I want to go to Walmart, and I want to go to Target, and I want to go to Starbucks, and I want to go to all these little knickknack places that really cut into the budget, because I'm looking at the budget as a whole. She's looking at it's only $5, it's only $10, it's only $100. And I'm like, yeah, but you don't understand. Like, had we saved that little bit, we could have went on a trip this month, or we could have went on a trip this year. So I think that you're hitting some key ones. And then kids, it's funny that, what are your thoughts about this? Why do you think that we have kids with a person without talking to them about what the plan is for the kids before we have them? Why do you think that happens?
Right. So for my husband and I, we came into the marriage with kids. So we had kids prior to even being together. So that's one thing I think people, especially nowadays, that there are blended families. And I know for us, like I said, I was young, so I just thought we were going to see eye to eye on everything. And and when they're babies, you know what I mean? Like, oh, they're so cute and squishy, and I want to kiss their little cheeks. You don't think about the discipline until it's time to discipline. And then all of a sudden it's like, well, hold on, I don't think they should be yelled at for that, or I don't think they should get disciplined for that. And it's like, then it arises. And I think premarital counseling is encouraged more now, but I don't think it was as much, at least not when I was younger. And to be honest with you, I was so young. If someone had told me, and if my parents are watching and you guys did tell me and I just disregarded, I apologize. But if someone did tell me at that time, I would have dismissed it and been like, counseling, like, oh, it's so boring. You know what I mean? I think it has to go with our mindset. I think it has to go with us just getting caught up in, we like this person so much, so of course we're going to agree on everything. It's just a naive state of mind, I think.
Just again, I think the naive and the ignorance is going to come up a lot in working through marriage, because even the fact of just working in marriage, I don't think people think that marriage is work. So the naive nature of that, they're like, oh no, we're married, and now they all lived happily ever after. The book doesn't say, and then all these issues came up. They just say they all lived happily ever after, and there's no other insight into what is going to actually take place. So I definitely get what you're saying. Let me catch up the chat really quick, because we have a couple other things in here. Let me make sure I get to the right place. Sorry. Conditions are boundaries. A marriage should have boundaries, in my opinion. Trina London says that. That's actually really good. Katina Walker says, am I able to go back to this link later to watch the entire episode? Absolutely. It's called the replay. You can go to the first row. And if you go to playlist, all the Intersations are in the playlist, and this would be the most recent one in that playlist. Tanya got her hands raised. Key Bryant, what's going on, brother Key? Finances. He said finances. Oh, and finances. Yes. Finances could end a happy home. I've seen people get punched in the face. Lifelong friends get punched over $5. So Tanya says, OMG, yes, this time around, stress, financial, etc. I think maybe not so much us, besides emotional baggage. The stress kills it fast. True. Then you responded, Katina. Okay, great. Gosh, you guys are live tonight. Thank you guys for being interactive tonight. Is it Shelly? Is it Shelly Stafford? Shelly?
Yeah, Shelly Stafford.
LOL. In reality, it's Blender. You get. Love child. Oh, we're so in love. Let's make a baby. Yep. And then yes, in love, and we are finally caught up. All right. And somebody said it was cold world. Oh, Trina, yes, outsourcing tasks. I know it's cold. I try not to be so cold. I try to be a better person. I promise I do. But sometimes I'm very logical. And so I approach problems strategically. And when I approach them that way, I typically take emotion out of it. But at least I communicate. I am upfront and honest. So with that, I want to ask the next question that I have for you, Sylvia. Because I think that you'll have a good insight on this, because going back to the strains and the stresses that are placed on marriage, I think there's different stressors from when your marriage is young and you're still getting to know yourself. And many people are still getting to know themselves. They don't go into marriage as single and whole. They go into marriage maybe single and fractured. And so they're kind of collecting all the pieces to get their own identity. But then when your marriage is established and maybe you do have your identity and now you do know your likes and your dislikes, you do know what you stand for, you do know what you're passionate about, you do know that there needs to be conversation about discipline with the kids, you know these things. What then do the stressors become? Because I feel like now you're in a place that, not that it's easy because you're still going to have to do the work, but now you guys know the financial aspect, you know the sexual desires, you know the rearing of the children and what matters most in all those areas. What exactly do you think, now that your marriage is an established marriage, are the stressors that come up now in the latter years?
I would still say finances are going to be a stressor. Kids are still going to be a stressor. We're blessed to have an older child that's not living with us, and some of his decisions aren't necessarily decisions that put us at ease every single night. So that can add a little bit of stress. But I think part of it is when you are young in a marriage, you don't quite look at each other as a team. You know what I mean? Whereas now, like, my husband and I are a team. So whatever we're going through together. And he is really good at, if I'm stressed, we're very good at reading each other. So if either of us are having a bad day or stressed, we know when to give each other space, and we know how to balance each other out. We know what'll put a smile on each other's face. You know what I mean? Like, we're very much a team at this point. Not that we weren't always a team, but we didn't always know how to work as a team. And I know, like, for me personally, if I'm stressing, one of the biggest things when we first met, I'm one of those where I used to be one of those where if we were having an argument, there was no walking away from that argument. Like, I'm a big person. I'm big on closure. So, like, no, we're going to finish this argument right now. You're not walking away from this. You know what I mean? And he's not. He's very much one of those people that needs to process what's going on. And he wants to circle back around to the conversation. And it took me many years to grasp that, because I would be insistent on finishing it now, which would turn into an even bigger argument than it needed to be. Whereas now, I know that he is that type of person. And so I know to, like, okay, if we're not seeing eye to eye, let's walk away. And then we'll come back to this when we can both have a civil conversation. So a lot of it has to do with, he just gave me a thumbs up because he agrees with the fact that I've grown in that aspect of our marriage and he likes it. But so that's a big part, is maturing with each other, growing with each other, and working as a team. No matter what we go through, at the end of the day, we're there for each other 100%. And that's one of the biggest things in our marriage.
So, because I want to dig a little deeper, since he's there and he can give thumbs up. For you, when it comes to going all the way back to, like, hey, we had an argument, now we're getting into the same bed because I'm not going to sleep on the couch, you're not going to sleep on the couch. And now I'm kind of like extending that olive branch where I'm, putting my foot against your foot. How do you how do you maneuver through having that disconnect that's created by an argument? Arguments typically create disconnect because there's two different sides. How do you navigate through that disconnect, but be able to come back to a place of love and acceptance and intimacy? Because again, you are that team. So how do you kind of really sidestep the emotions of the disconnect and really promote reconnecting with your husband or reconnecting with your spouse and other people's extents?
So again, it goes back to maturity and growth. Before, my husband and I, when we would argue, and when I say before, I'm talking like, gosh, 7-8 years ago. When we would argue, that was actually during our separation, but we would go days without talking. Like I did not care. And I know that they say don't go to bed angry.
Sounds good.
Right? Yeah. Like, I didn't care. I would sleep on the couch. I didn't want to sleep in the same bed. And so now it is a rule that we do not, I don't care if we're angry or not, both of us agree that we don't leave the house without kissing each other goodbye, whether we're angry or not. We don't go to sleep without kissing each other goodnight, whether we're angry or not. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that we have separated, we have been near divorce. And so we've seen what life looks like without each other. And also the fact that I think what really brought that home for us was when I was in a car accident 2 years ago and almost died. That was a big eye opener, because if we had just gotten into an argument before I left the house and I did die, he would have had that weight on his shoulders the rest of his life. And so for us, it's been a learning and maturity thing, but it's tough. Like, I'm not gonna lie. Just the other day, I don't even remember what it was, but I was irritated with him for something, and I was getting ready to leave, and he came up and gave me a kiss, and I was like, but at the same time, he knows that's gonna annoy me, but that's a rule that we've made for each other. And what it does is it kind of softens, it softens it up a little bit, and then you get to a point where like, what were we upset with each other about? You know what I mean? Like, making that effort to kiss each other goodbye or to, kiss each other goodnight just kind of reminds you, what, at the end of the day, we're in this together. I do love this person. And the fight or the argument wasn't as big as it really we made it to be. You know what I mean? So right. I feel it's really helped us doing that to kind of soften whatever the argument was.
Okay, I like that. Really quick, I'm going to catch us up in the chat. Jay Renard, cousin says, I meant my job requires, he's clarifying for me, my job requires me to be gone anywhere from 5 days to 10 months. The military stance is your marriage is important, but you must complete the mission first. Okay, and that is a hard sacrifice for people to make. Tanya, yes, balance. Key says overload on the positives. So that's how he kind of reconnects that connection, is he overloads on the positives. Hey, Key, is that, oh, never mind, you clarified. What I mean by that is after the argument and trying to find a resolution, even if one isn't found, trying to overload on the positive things you like and love about each other. True. And don't just go into the positive and things you love and like about yourself, because that will keep you on your side of the argument. It's okay to like yourself and love yourself, but don't entrench yourself to the place where your partner can't come and give you a kiss before you leave. You sigh. No shade. Aaron London, I don't know how to say that last name. How do you say that last name, so?
I don't even know how to pronounce it, so I think it's gear. I'm not even going to try.
All right. I'm going to just... Aaron London, hey, what's up? Ronnie should have been on camera with you. Oh, yeah, that would have been cool. Hey, we need to do that. I'm thinking we should do like a couples intersation one of these nights. I got to get in a relationship first, but I mean, we'll figure it out. Key, go to a state of gratitude. Absolutely. It's very hard to stay angry. This is true. Like, when you start just being grateful for things, and like what you still saying, you had a place where you were in a car accident, and I remember when you posted that you were in the car accident. I remember with pictures of the car. It was like, you're still alive. is this somebody posting on your behalf? Because it was really bad. But going into a place of gratitude, like from that point forward, knowing, what life was like when you guys were separated and apart from each other, getting back together, getting in a car accident, and knowing that, like, holy crap, like we could have had an argument and we could have created that space. And now we are thinking about separating again. And now one of us no longer exists on the planet. Like, be grateful that I have you to argue with. Be grateful that there is the ability for us to come back together and have these conversations. And though they may be difficult and they may be hard, they may be trying and irritating at times, be grateful that you have them. And it may not be I'm not saying wallow or just lavish yourself with negativity and arguments, but be grateful that you have somebody that is willing to interact with you both in the positive spectrum and the negative spectrum, and hopefully willing to come back at the end of that negative experience and say, hey, look, I still love you, and I still, because the love and the marriage is separate, I still am committed to this marriage. So that's really good. I like that. Tanya Lynn says good rules. And I just skip what you say, Sylvia. I don't know why you don't just say what you want to say you could say it live. It's okay. You don't have to type everything. Aaron London says, I feel him at Sil, I feel him. And Trina says, yes, I would, I think it was supposed to be love to see them have this combo together. All right, we'll try to make something happen. Is your husband camera shy, Sil?
A little bit, yes.
Oh, okay. Well, he'll have to tell him we said he'll have to get over it. He can hear me. So tell him I said he'll have to get over it. Maybe you need to do some sessions with him, but you will get over it. Tanya, grateful equals happy equals hard to stay negative. True. Great gratitude will move you to a place of appreciation every single time. I'm a firm believer in that. So as always with the first row, I always like to try to shift from just problem identification. And you've talked about a lot of different spectrums and solutions. But for you, what are the tools that are important to really implement early in a marriage? And some may be premarital tools that you implement, some may be postmarital tools that you implement. But from your perspective, from what you've experienced in marriage and what you've seen, going back to those real world examples, what are the tools that you have seen that have been really important to implement into a marriage early?
Communication, that's like the number one thing. And I'm a huge proponent now of premarital counseling, whether it is with a counselor, with a mentor, or even, marriage books. Ronnie and I did, while we were separated, we did Love and Respect by Emerson. I can't remember his last name. I encourage anyone dating, engaged, married for a year, married for 50 years. That was an eye-opening book for us. So the biggest thing is really communication early on in the marriage. Before you're married, before you get married, talk about everything. Talk about how you're going to deal with the finances. Talk about what your desires are sexually, because you do need to line up with those things. Talk about disciplining the kids. Talk about religion. Where do you stand on that? That was another battle for my husband and I, because he was not raised in the church. I was raised in the church, and that was a struggle. So honestly, pre-marriage, you need to talk about everything, period. And then going into the marriage, our biggest tools are communication and date nights. Date. Like, I cannot stress that enough. I will never forget when we were separated. I was talking to a friend of mine who, as a matter of fact, it was Charles. I was talking to Charles, and he had said someone told him that falling out of love is a choice. And that kind of like ticked me off. Him and I kind of got into a little argument about that. Because I was like, what? Like, I would not choose to be here. What are you talking about? That's the dumbest, naive thing I've ever heard in my life. But looking back on it now, I understand what he was saying, because truthfully, you choose whether or not you're going to put in work in your marriage. And to me, marriage is like a fire. And you have to constantly be adding logs to your fire to keep that fire burning. You have to constantly be putting stuff into that fire to keep your fire burning. And the minute you stop, AKA the minute you stop communicating, the minute you stop dating, the minute you stop investing in each other, your fire is going to burn out. I mean, even when you're in an argument, like for example, my husband and I giving each other a kiss goodbye, like we may be upset with each other, but we're still going to, fan the little embers that are burning to keep a little bit of a flame going. You know what I mean? Because you have to keep your fire burning. So once you're like later on in your marriage, you need to date. You need to still invest in each other. You need to be selfless and do for others. Like my husband is, I mean, he's amazing. He makes my lemon water in the morning. He serves me and I serve him. Like you have to really be selfless in your marriage and serve each other. And I know there was a point in my marriage where it was, women had like an attitude with submitting to the husband. It was kind of like bowing down to the husband. And unfortunately, that got into my head at a point in our marriage. And I realized like it's an honor to serve my husband and it's an honor for him to serve me. And that's really unique. That's what marriage is about. You need to serve each other and love each other to keep it lasting.
I like that. And so you're kind of moving me to another question because I call it the tribe, the tribe you have around you, the people that you're talking to. Maybe frequently, maybe infrequently, it doesn't matter. But having those people around you to where like Charles is telling you, hey, look, this is your choice to be like where you're at right now. It may not feel like, why would I choose that? But this was a choice. And the choice was made every time you didn't make the investment to add another log to the fire. Because as you and I both know, fire needs fuel and it will burn the fuel up over time. So once the fuel is all gone, fire goes out. But how... for your marriage to go through its early stages, to go through a separation, to going through coming back together and moving forward, how important has your community been in that? And please refresh my memory, because I believe we were having this conversation on the last Intersation where you had said something like the people at work were complaining about their husbands and how that kind of like bled into your mindset about your husband. And now instead of having this gratitude appreciation cycle, it's negative complaining cycle that you're spinning in. So how important is your community in the overall health of yourself and the overall health of your marriage?
It's huge. It's absolutely huge. And yes, that was, we earlier on in our marriage, I had a group of coworkers who were complaining about their husbands all the time. And at that point, I had nothing to complain about. Not that he was perfect, but I just had nothing to complain about. And eventually they rubbed off on me. And eventually I found things to complain about. And it obviously caused friction in our marriage because all of a sudden I was like nitpicking on things that I was never nitpicking on. But that doesn't just stop at coworkers or friends, because even, and my husband gave me permission to speak on this because we're being transparent, but his family was part of the problem too. And his birth mother was a huge problem because she fed into a lot of, my husband, for when my kids were younger, we made the choice for me to have the career job because I already had one established and he was going to stay home with the kids. And he was not one of those guys that stayed at home on the Xbox all day. He stayed at home and did everything that a mother would do with her kids that nobody in the world would have a problem with. He bathed the kids, he did the laundry, he cooked, he cleaned, dinner was ready when I got home. He held down the household while I was working. And his mom did not like that. In her mind, that's not what a man did. That's a man was supposed to provide financially. And she was in my ear constantly about that. And eventually my mindset kind of shifted and I got kind of annoyed that he was at home and my attitude kind of changed towards him. And all of a sudden I was a little more disrespectful towards him. And well, I didn't need to show him this respect because what's he doing? You know what I mean? Like it really played a huge part in our marriage. And you don't think that your family, especially your husband's family, is going to do that type of stuff. And so for me, it was big. The fact that his mom was saying this about her own son, I was like, oh gosh, there's something wrong with this picture. Not wrong with what she was saying, but wrong with the fact that my husband was staying at home. You know what I mean? Like that was a big issue. And as a matter of fact, I remember earlier on in our marriage, we were together for probably like 3 or 4 years, and we had just gotten some bathroom stuff, and he had come home with some towels that matched our decor, right? And he was super excited, like, "Babe, I got these towels, aren't they nice?" Blah blah. And I was like, "Oh, babe, those match perfect." Like, I was good. And when he left the room, his mom was like, "You should let him do that. That's controlling, and he's trying to control you." Blah blah. And all of a sudden, I went from, "Oh my gosh, those are so cute," to, "What? He's trying to control." You know what I mean? Like it totally shifted my mindset. And so, who you listen to, it plays a huge role in how you look at your marriage, the choices that you make. And we had to separate from that. We had to distance ourselves from that. And I had to really hone into the people that I was talking to. I had to be wise. And, there were certain people I started realizing, okay, this person is only encouraging me to leave my husband. And that's not what I want to do. I want to stay married to my husband. And I wasn't in an abusive relationship. He wasn't cheating on me. It was nothing like that. I wasn't in danger. And so I started realizing, you know what, I need to start speaking to people who are going to speak life into our marriage, who are going to encourage us to pray for one another, to work with one another. And it was when we started going to counseling, and that they were the ones that were like, "You guys need to watch your circle, because you're either going to have a circle that's going to build you up and help you succeed and reach your goals, or you're going to have a circle that's going to tear you down. So you need to decide what you want and who you want surrounding you." And so that was a huge factor for me. And I've even learned now, like it's gotten to a point where I really don't talk too much outside of my marriage about what my husband and I are going through, because I talk to God first, and then I talk to him, because that's the point that we are in our marriage. Like I don't need to talk to anybody else about what's going on with us, because if I have a problem with him, I can go to him and say, "Babe, I didn't like the way that this happened, or I didn't like the way that you addressed this, or there was a miscommunication here," and we are able to solve that now without so much venting outside of the marriage.
Yeah, you're hitting so many different things, but that is the healthiest place to be. I feel like sometimes people hop over their spouse or hop over their partner to go to their allies, who are going to say, "Yeah, you're right." And don't get me wrong, sometimes their allies are people who will say, "No, you're wrong," and will call you on your BS. And those are good allies to go to. But even if they're those good allies to go to, you don't hop over your spouse. This is the person you're in the relationship with. This is the person that you made the covenant with. So if this is the person that you've made the covenant with, that's who you should be speaking to about, because they're the ones who are going to help you resolve the issue. Like any solution that somebody else gives you now has to still be ran through that person that you hopped over in the first place. I actually had a friend of mine out in California, and it was before he got married. And it was funny because we were sitting at the basketball court, and his fiance at the time was like, "Oh, I think we should do counseling and this, that, and the other, blah, 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 blah." And, we grew up in the hood. So he's like, "I ain't doing no MNF in counseling." He's like, "She got me messed up. If she want to do counseling, then we just don't need to get married." And I'm sitting there, I'm listening to him talking. And when he got done, I was like, "Bro, like, if you really love this woman the way you say you love this woman, and she makes you feel the way you say she makes you feel, then you need to take your ass to counseling. Like, I'm your boy. I get it. We don't really want to go to counseling. But if this is the woman you say you want to spend your life with, then you got to make that concession to go to counseling and swallow that pride pill or swallow that ego and say, "Hey, look, I'm going to go ahead and do this." Because at the end of the day, when you start asking yourself the question, is counseling going to hurt us, or is counseling going to help us? And if counseling is going to help you communicate better with one another, then we should all know that counseling is going to help us. So then the question is why wouldn't you want to help your marriage? Like, why wouldn't you want to help your marriage before it even becomes a marriage? Like, Come on, let's get some success thoughts going here. So I feel you on who you talk to. That can be the poison, because that conversation could have easily been, yeah, man, she's trying to get you to counsel. She's trying to take your man card. She's trying to make you less this. She's trying to make you a woman. Like I could have went all that way with him, but it wouldn't have been good advice to him. And fortunately, he and I have that type of relationship where, look, I don't have to agree with you. You're my boy. I love you, but I don't have to agree with you. And you, my boy, you love me, and you don't have to agree with me. So that circle, protecting that community is so critical. And being willing to be able to eject anybody outside of the husband and the wife. Anybody can be ejected out of the community, because if you have somebody who's speaking poison, if you have somebody, like I tell people all the time, like, hey, don't ask me to be in your marriage or in your wedding as like a groomsman or a best man or anything like that, because now there is no dirt you can do that I'm not going to call you on. Like oh, you're going on this trip to such and such. Yeah, you can't come. Like that simple. You can't come, because my commitment to your covenant when I stood up there with you means more to me than you having some one night stand fling or something else on the side. What did you call it? Sidestepping? It means more to me than that. So don't ask me to be up there if you want to come around and play and all these different things. Because see, I'm single. I can do whatever I want to do, but you're not. You're married. And now that you have me up here, you're professing in front of everybody and your mama that this is who you love. And now you want me to be up there with you as an accomplice to run some dirt? No, I'm good. I can't. Either don't have me up there or don't ask to come, because you can't come. Sorry. So I feel what you're saying in so many different ways, but it is important. And to the extent of, I always tell people, like, nobody wants to be married to a mama's boy. And nobody wants to be technically married to a daddy's girl either. But if you are married to one, there's going to come a point where that friction and that conflict, especially if they're a negative voice from the community, where now you don't want to feel like you have to battle your spouse and that person to eject that person. Because what's going to happen, typically what happens if that person can't break out of what I call the trance of being a mama's boy or a daddy's girl, typically what happens is they have to come to the defense of their parent. And now it's like, well, now it's me and my parent versus my wife, or me and my parent versus my husband. And it's like, well, then the other person who feels like they're being jumped, now I got to eject both of you. Now y'all can go and be happily ever after with each other, and I'll be just fine by myself. So tons of things there. Sorry to sidetrack, but I really feel what you're saying. And thank you for your transparency on sharing that. Sometimes it is the people that are closest to us that we love the most that are changing through us listening to them, our perspective on the things that we would typically appreciate about our relationship, and shifting them to a negative light. There's a couple more questions I have for you tonight. We're already over an hour, but I'm just going to go in a little bit overtime. The next question, because I know you guys have kids, and I think, I guess I'll give you the cliche. Oh, I'm going to stay and make it work for the kids. How does having kids change the commitment to the marriage, in your opinion?
Commitment to the marriage. I've seen a lot of people stay for the kids, and I know that was never a thing for my husband and I, only because when we were arguing in front of the kids all the time is not healthy for them, and that's more damaging. And we could see it on there, because we were not very good at taking, again, like I said, we were not very good at taking the arguments away from the kids. Now, like, if we have a disagreement, we will discuss it privately versus in front of the kids. But that, again, is something that we had to grow and learn in the process. And so for us personally, that was never an issue, whether or not we were going to stay together for the kids, because I've seen too many people do that and they're miserable. And I think that it is better for you to be separated or divorced and happy, and your kids to see you happy, than dragging your kids through all that, the arguments and whatnot. But unfortunately, I think that's a huge reason. I know a lot of people that stay for the kids.
Yeah, they stay, and then they provide their kids bad examples of how to be miserable with a person you don't want to be with. That's definitely not good. Key Bryant said, we're going to stay and make it worse for the kids. That's exactly what happens. We're going to stay and make it the worst example possible for our kids. Before I ask you this next question, for those who are watching live in the chat, we're actually almost towards the end of the Intersation, but I want you to, if you have something that is a takeaway from yourself for tonight, if you could place one takeaway from tonight's conversation into the live chat feed so we could read that, I would definitely be grateful for you to do that. Again, remember, this is an interactive network, so we want you guys to interact. But we're coming towards the end. But if there's a takeaway that you have from tonight, whether it's something that you said out of your own mouth that you really just is still resonating with you, or something that was said by anybody in the live chat, one of us on the live video feed, please share what your takeaway is from tonight. I definitely would appreciate that. So my second to last question for you is, when it comes to marriage, because I think what this conversation was about tonight is a lot about advice, tools, and tips. And for yourself, being in a marriage for 20 years, what has been the best advice that you have been given that you have applied in your marriage?
Keeping God in the center, 100%. Like 100%. Like I said, I go to Him before I go to anyone else when I have a problem, an issue, struggle with my husband. And then dating, like date. I can't stress that enough. I remember when we were younger, people would tell us to date, and I would shrug it off, because we never felt, there's some parents that feel like they need a break from their kids. We never felt like we needed a break from our kids. We enjoyed being around our kids all the time. And so we kind of dated in, which is fine, but you need that alone time as well. And I think honestly that was part of our hindrance in our marriage too, was the fact that we weren't getting to know each other as we grew. That's why we grew apart, because we weren't taking the time to grow together and to date outside of our kids. It's fine to date inside, but you need to get away and have that separate moment away from the kids. So those were the two biggest things. I did not realize the dating was such a huge thing until later in our marriage, but those were the two biggest pieces of advice that we've applied. And communicate.
I like what you said there, but the thing that really jumped out is when you said when you basically, as we grew, we weren't getting to know each other. And when that happens, what you end up with is, as you grow and you don't get to know somebody, you end up with a stranger. And it's hard to be married to a stranger because with a stranger, there's nothing invested. Like they always say, there's a thin line between love and hate. And I think that the thing that keeps us from crossing over the line from love into hate is familiarity, under knowing the person, genuinely caring about the person. And so when you start to grow apart, or the person changes because they're coming to their own maturity or their evolution that's taking place as they're coming into this, and you're not focused on that, you're not paying attention to them, and then you look back, you're like, who the hell are you? Like, I don't remember being here with you. And now that thin line that was keeping love and hate separated is now no longer there. And all it takes is, well, you did that funky, and I don't like that. Now I hate you, don't want to be with you. We need to see other people after we divorce. Like, that's how I believe that happens. So that's a very good piece of advice, is dating, to keep that familiarity, because then you can ask those questions, the typical questions about, how was your day? How are things going for you? Those are great questions. But I feel like when you're on dates, just like when you first start dating a person, you're asking deeper questions and you're listening more intently versus, oh, well, I'm making dinner, but you come in, hey, babe, I gave you your kiss. How was your day? But I'm really still cooking dinner. I'm not getting to know some of your stressors. I'm not getting to know some of your experiences. So it's critical to have that level of communication, to where, as even you're growing at different rates and in different directions or whatever it may be, you're still in tune and in step with each other in regards to what that person is becoming or who that person is becoming. So that's a really good one. Key Bryant put here in the chat, communicate through your spouse first before going to people on the outside. Don't let other people's relationships and their opinions affect your relationship. That is a good takeaway from tonight. And so we are to our last question. The question I ask at the end of every Intersation, just like the first question is the same, the last question is the same. For yourself tonight on working through marriage, if you were to give the audience who are watching live or those who are watching via the replay, 2 to 3 takeaways from tonight's conversation on working through marriage, what would those takeaways be that you would want them to take with them tonight?
Well, one, pre-counseling or pre-communication before you get married and decide to commit your life to each other, because you need to know where you guys stand in an array of categories. 2, love and respect. If you have not done the book, there's a book and there's a workbook. Again, whether you're married, engaged, dating, whatever it is, even if you're single, heck, it gives you a really great viewpoint on the opposite sex, and you learn a lot about yourself as well. And then also, again, watch your circle. You don't need to tell everybody your business. You don't need, like, have a couple key people that you talk to and make sure that they are giving you sound advice, giving you wisdom. Look at, you don't want to talk to somebody who's had, who has a horrible outlook on marriage about how to succeed in your marriage, because 9 times out of 10, they're not really going to have the wisdom that you need to succeed in your marriage. So you want to make sure that you're talking to people and seeking advice from people who have your best interests at heart and are going to give you sound advice. Pray, 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 pray. Like, seriously. And if have people around you that are going to lift you up, because there was a point in my marriage that I was like over it. I was done praying. I was like, God, I'm done, like, for real. And thank God for those people that stood in the gap for me, because we wouldn't have the marriage that we have now without that continual prayer. And I'm so glad we struggled the way that we did, because it's brought us closer. We are much closer now than we've ever been before. And date. I can't stress that enough. Seriously, continue to get to know each other, continue to grow together, because if you have kids, they're gonna move out one day, and you're going to be stuck with each other, and you need to get along. So it's important that you not only love your spouse, that you're not only in love with your spouse, but that you like your spouse, and that you guys are the best of friends. Like, I can honestly say my husband is my best friend. I mean, I adore spending time with him. We play games all the time, Yahtzee, dominoes. I mean, we kick it, we chill. So, and I wouldn't want it any other way, but it took struggle and growth to get to where we are now. So keep persevering. Don't give up. If you truly want to be in your marriage and make it last, keep persevering, because you'll move from surviving to thriving. I promise you that.
I like how you did that. Brought that full circle. Survive to thrive. I see what you did there. I'm paying attention, Pimpin. That is actually really good. Date. Just the one thing, when you say date, I just think of the fuel. Going back to the fuel for the fire. That those dates are that fuel. And you're right. A lot of people end up married for 18 years, and when that last kid turns 18, they're divorced because they're like, well, I don't even know you. I've just been hanging out with you raising kids, and now I don't know what to do with you. So we should probably see other people, because I don't know you and I don't want to get to know you. I've been around you for 18 years. I want something new. I want something shiny. So that was my last question for you. I definitely appreciate you coming on. Always appreciate your transparency. And I, from the moment we picked this topic, I knew that it was going to be a good conversation. We'll have to try to connect something for having you and your husband on. Maybe doing you know what? Maybe we should do a couples Intersation panel. Do like 3, I think, let's see, 2, 4, 6. So I could do at least 3 couples and then moderate that. That'd be a very interesting conversation. Ooh, we might have to do like an opening segment like the Newlywed Game or something, so that way we don't ruin anybody's marriage. But I definitely appreciate for all that you've done as far as tonight and your support of the first row. I feel like you have tons more insight to give, and we're just going to keep coming up with topics to bring you back on until you say, okay, Billy, I'm ready to have a segment of my own on first row. Just throwing that out there. But other than that, I thank you so much for, just like I said, being transparent, being open, being honest, and helping to remove some of the fog that the fairy tale that a lot of us think is coming with marriage can be created by social media, TV, and the other different things that we expose ourselves to daily. So thank you for clearing some of that fog up. There's still much more work to be done on it, but this is just a taste of the wealth of knowledge that Sylvia London has. So you guys better be on the lookout for her. Other than that, as with every Intersation, I like to present what I call the tools for the first row. So the name First Row is a play on my last name. My last name is Rowe, W-R-O-E. However, the first row, it originated from a business mentor of mine that I had at a very young age. He taught me something about the first row. He said, the people who sit on the first row, they make the most money and they get the most information. And the reason this happens is because for them, there is no distraction between the speaker who's giving the information and themselves. So that's where the first row came from. And so because you are sitting on the first row, I like to present something called tools for the first row. And these are tools that I thought about when I started thinking about the topic of working through marriage. And really, I can't emphasize the topic of, or the work in working through marriage enough, because it is something that you're going to have to work through. And we'll get there when we get to these tools. So the very first tool that I came up with when it comes to working through marriage is marriage is not a finish line. And this is why I say it's going to be continual work. I feel like sometimes in life, we look at marriage as how we would look at running a race, where you do all this upfront conditioning, you do all this upfront work, and then once all that work's done, you have your big race and you come in first place in that race, you cross the finish line, all your hard work is paid off, right? That's the race aspect. But marriage is not like that. You do all this hard work to get to the place of marriage, and then the second heat of hard work starts to keep that marriage thriving, to keep that fuel being added to your fire. So the first tool is that marriage is not a finish line. It is not something that you are seeking to get to and then cut off all the effort that it took to get there. It is something that you're going to have to wake up and intentionally pour effort into every single day. Because going back to what Sylvia said, you never know, like the day you don't pour effort into your marriage could be the last day of your marriage, whether that's through divorce, separation, cheating, just somebody doesn't like you anymore, or it could be through death. And so really pouring into your marriage and marriage not being a finish line is about really maximizing every single day. I see so often, like, people get married and then it's like the dating aspect for men. They stop courting, they stop pursuing their wife. And so then you end up, and I don't feel one way or the other about what I think her name's Aisha Curry. I'm horrible with names. Is that Curry's wife? Where she's like, oh, I don't feel pursued. I don't feel attractive. Like, all these guys aren't attracted to me. What's up? But because you stopped dating, because you stopped that pursuit, now all of a sudden the things that won that affection or that won you that yes in will you marry me are like, well, gosh, did you just do all those things to kind of hype me up? I'm dating somebody who has told me time and time again, hey, if you aren't going to do what you do right now forever, don't do it. Like, I'm okay with you not doing it. Like, if you're not going to open doors for me, just don't do it. I'm okay with that. And for me, it's like, well, I open doors for my best friend. She's a female. I open doors for her. I open doors for my mother. I open doors for a lot of females. So for me, that's just like, hey, that's something that I do. And really, it's not about us dating. It's about who I am. So it's about from that perspective for men, but I think also from the perspective of women, like the things that you were doing to attract that pursuit, they can't just go cold turkey. Like, if you were bringing me lunch every day while we were dating boyfriend and girlfriend because you wanted to win me over as the husband or have me to pursue you as the wife. Yeah, don't let me become a husband and now all of a sudden I'm trying to figure out what I'm eating for lunch every day. That's not fair. And so that's the first tool is marriage is not a finish line. Whatever you did to get to that place of marriage, continue to do that and continue to build upon that, because marriage should not be stagnant. It should promote growth. So the second tool that I came up with in regards to this is as soon as divorce becomes an option, it more than likely will eventually become a chosen solution. I brought this tool up because of the fairy tale concept, where we go into marriage thinking we're going to be the bestest of friends and everything's going to be great and it's going to be so wonderful and we're never going to argue. Like Sylvia said, we're going to cuddle every second we're around each other. We're going to be cuddled, hugged up. Look, I sleep hot. You're going to have to get the hell away from me in the middle of the night because like that's just is what it is. But the reason I say as soon as divorce becomes an option, or as soon as it becomes an option, it more than likely will become a solution, because it is next to impossible to have a marriage that goes from beginning throughout the rest of your life without any challenges. And I feel like where for us, Sylvia, growing up and seeing those marriages, oh, my grandmother was married to my grandfather for 50 years and all these different things, but they don't tell you like, oh, but your grandpa has like 2 other kids out on the side with 2 other chicks. They don't tell you that, oh, well, you know, we were out here doing crack cocaine or we was out here doing cocaine. They don't tell you the parts of the challenge that it's going to be. And so in order to like truly like get through those tough times, if you're separating the love and the marriage, in order to get through that, you have to cross off that option of divorce. And when you cross off that option of divorce, all of a sudden you're not exploring like, okay, so how do we separate? And I can tell you the reason why I'm in a separation right now is because for me, I was like, you know what? And I know this from the very beginning of the marriage. I went into the marriage with divorce is an option, because I'm not going to be unhappy for the rest of my life. But I brought that negativity and that option, I brought that from my first marriage, because that first marriage was like, come on, let's make this work. Let's do whatever it takes. Come on, we can do it. And that person was like, hell no, I'm done being with you. You're too young. You're too childish. You got issues. And so because of that, I brought that, oh, well, since we can get divorced from this first marriage into the second marriage, now it's a lot easier for me to say, okay, what are my options here? I'm unhappy. I don't like who I'm becoming. Instead of it being communicate with the person, well, I did communicate with my estranged wife. I did communicate with her. But instead of it being communicate until communication is received and working on the language that needs to be spoken for them to understand and interpret what I'm saying, it was like, okay, well, I've communicated enough in the way that I know how to communicate. And now I'm going to select this divorce option. I'm going to select the nuclear option and end the marriage. So that's the second tool, is as soon as divorce becomes an option, it more than likely, it more than likely will eventually become a chosen solution. I'm going to pause there. So what you got to add to that?
I'm so sorry. So here's another thing too, that love and respect. One of the things that I learned, this is another tool, was how important respect is, especially for men. I remember when I had learned about this, a couple of people were kind of annoyed and they're like, no, you need to earn my respect. And if they don't earn my respect, then they're not getting my respect. But really, honestly, God does not tell us that people earn our respect. Like we're meant to respect people whether they earn it or not. And I will tell you that when I shifted, because like I said, I had people in my ear that caused me to lose respect for my husband for no reason, for things that we had already planned on him doing in our marriage, but they had a problem with it. Now I had a problem with it. And once I shifted that and I began making it a point to respect him and to show him that respect in our marriage, I saw a transformation in him as well. So that was a really huge wake up call for me, was my level of respect can make or break his spirit as well. It's kind of the same as when we're disciplining our kids. We can make or break their spirit the way that we come at them. And it's the same thing in our marriage. And that was a huge, so along with everything else that I said at the end, respect, especially for men, is a huge, huge factor. If you feel like there is a lack or a breakdown in your husband, I really want to challenge you to shift your level of respect and really show him some respect. If you're not, it's not a matter of him earning it. It's not a matter of you submitting, or it's looked at as a bad thing. But I'm telling you, I saw my husband completely transform and like blossom, if you will, when I started showing him the respect that not necessarily he deserved, but that I was called to give him. So that's my last point.
Look at you throwing in extra tools. I like that. Hey, no, girl, I like you. And we'll talk offline about something, but I like the fact that you bring that up. Respect is huge, especially it's huge for me. Respect and appreciation are like my love languages. If I feel like you're disrespectful or I feel like you don't appreciate the things I do, everything else just begins to systematically shut down. So that's a great add to the conversation. So tool number 3, and well, we're going to say tool number 3.2. You got tool number 3, so respect. So tool number 3.2 is seek wisdom seek wise counsel from unbiased parties. It's easy to have yes men and yes women on your team telling you could do no wrong and that your farts smell like roses and everything you do is gold and everything they do is rotten. But really, you want the unbiased people who also have the wisdom. That's why I said wise counsel from unbiased parties. You want those people who are going to shoot you straight and tell you what their honest opinion is based on 1, their experiences, based on 2, the experiences that they have observed or their observations. And then based on 3, really having not your best interest in mind, but having your marriage's best interest in mind. And that is for me, the pivotal part of advice. When you have people who can speak into your marriage through you or to your spouse and genuinely not care about what either one of your sides may be and say, this is the side of the marriage that I'm siding with. And that happened to me when my estranged wife and I went to counseling. We went to crazy enough, we went to an ex-girlfriend's mother's house who's a pastor, and we were talking to her, and I was like, she needs to make me happy, and she was like, no, Billy, she doesn't need to make you happy. Your happiness is your responsibility, and it's unfair to put that much pressure on somebody else to be responsible for your happiness. That's not fair, and that's not marriage. And I was like, what? You're supposed to be on my side. But the wisdom in what she was saying really made me take a step back and say, okay, how can I be more responsible for my happiness? Because if I'm unhappy, it is impossible for me to pour happiness, love, care, and affection into somebody else. So how can I be more responsible for my happiness so that I'm more capable of pouring that love, compassion, and affection into my spouse? So that is a critical one. Spend time talking with allies that are wise and unbiased and are for your marriage, not just for you and not just for your spouse. And then ejecto seat on the other people who are not unbiased, or the people who are just those yes men and women who are going to try to corrupt and taint your thoughts about your spouse. Because really, any person who's trying to taint your thoughts about your spouse is trying to taint your thoughts about your marriage. Just simple as that. Tool number 4 is you can't half clean up tension. And I really wanted to say you can't half-ass clean up tension, but I'm gonna just say you can't half clean up tension. You have to take care of the tensions in your marriage, the arguments, the frustrations, the irritations. You have to work. I hate telling people what they have to do. My recommendation is that you work through those in their entirety. I just did a Wednesday Word, I think it was last week, on the buildup, and it was about the tipping point that we reach in our lives when we allow things to build up over time. And if all you're doing are these half cleanup of tensions, and then you get more tension, and then you half clean up, eventually you're going to find yourself at a tipping point because of the fact of all these little half cleanups have now rotted over here. It's toxic over here. It's poisonous over here. All those are going to add up to something that is going to be detrimental to your marriage. So that's tool number 4, is you cannot half clean up tensions. You have to focus on addressing the problem in its entirety and realize, just like Sylvia said earlier, it may not be solved in the first conversation. That's okay. Be willing to walk away from it, but also have a game plan to come back to it so that you can resolve it completely and in its entirety, so that it doesn't have that opportunity to clog up your marriage pipeline. And then the fifth and the last and the final tool is find what works for you. When it comes to marriage, marriage is almost like our fingerprints. No two fingerprints are alike. No two marriages are exactly alike. The struggles, the joys, the pains, the sorrows, the happiness, all that stuff is unique to the marriage. Even if it's the same people, like have you seen, Sylvia, where people have gotten divorced and then they get back married?
Yeah.
Not even that marriage is the same, and it's the same two people. So
Right.
find what works for you. And I know, like, people with like what people would consider crazy marriages. Like, they're like, oh my God, you have an open marriage. Like, so you can do whatever you want, but you're married. But that works for their marriage. So if it works for their marriage, it's not something that works for me, but it works for their marriage. I can't really knock their marriage. But find what works for you and what works for your spouse. And that's going to come through what Sylvia has talked about, an abundance tonight: communication. If you communicate openly, honestly, vulnerably, transparently with your spouse, you're going to find out what works for you both and what works for the marriage. And if it works for the marriage and it works for you, that's a win-win that you guys are both going to take away a true, like a powerful marriage from. Doesn't mean you're not going to have any challenges. Doesn't mean that you're going to get to that finish line and like, whew, so glad I ran that race. No, you're going to have to keep running. And I hope you don't catch a cramp, because you're going to have to keep running. You're going to have to keep putting in the work every single day. So those are the five, actually, we're going to say 5.1 tools that we have for the first row tonight. The first tool being marriage is not a finish line. The second tool being as soon as divorce becomes an option, it more than likely will eventually become a chosen solution. The tool number 3 is respect. Respect, really, I'm going to say respect your husband and respect your wife. Respect should be a two-way street. And it's not an earned two-way street. I like that aspect of it. It is a two-way street that you should be willing to give. And then tool 3.1 is seek wise counsel from unbiased parties. Tool number 4 is you cannot clean up tensions. And tool number 5 is find what works for you and your marriage with you and your spouse. So that's all we got for tonight. I hope you guys have genuinely enjoyed this Intersation as I have. Thank you guys for rocking with us for about an hour and a half of content. I hope if you're watching live, you got the most that you can possibly get out of this tonight. If you're watching via the replay, I hope you leave us a message in the comments so that we can interact with you guys for up to 7 days after the video has been posted. The next time that you will find us live on the first row will actually be tomorrow. It will be the Wednesday Word. The Wednesday Word is at 6:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. I almost said 7:30 p.m. 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And the topic will be what matters most to you. If you want to know what that is, you're going to have to figure out that by tuning in live at that time or watching the replay. But I like when you guys come in live. But other than that, I thank you, Sylvia, again for being on tonight. Thank you for coming with a bonus tool for the first row for the people who are watching. I wish we could only have that for the people who are watching live. Yeah, you should have been there live. But whatever, you guys get all of it. But I definitely appreciate you being on tonight. Thank you for you guys being very interactive in the chat tonight, sharing your nuggets of wisdom and your encouragement throughout this Intersation. I hope you guys have gotten tools and wisdom to take and really share with those people that you're in marriages with, or people that you know who are in marriages that need to hear this type of information. But other than that, thank you guys for tuning in. If you have not already, please subscribe to the channel. And when you click the subscription button, click the bell so you can be notified when we are live on the first row. But until the next time, thank you guys for sitting on the first row. We look forward to seeing you guys tomorrow on the first row. Until the next time, one love, peace, and God bless. Good night.